Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Center for Black Visual Culture at the Institute of African American Affairs. My name is Kalila. I'm the program manager here at the center, and we are thrilled to welcome you here tonight. We know that there are so many things that you could have done, and you came to, come to this joyous talk with us. So we're very happy to see you here. Um, this is the second book talk of our February book talk series with Eric Hart Jr. and Emil Wilbekin. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Deborah Willis, the director of the Center for Black Visual Culture, and she will welcome you and tell you more about tonight's event.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here, to see all of you here. Even though 100 people said they're RSVPing and they're going to be here, and we know they're going to come in CP time, so be prepared to move up closer. But I'd like to just say welcome and thank you, just sharing the moment. So we're really happy and thrilled to have Eric Hart Jr. here and Emil to share this moment here with CBVC and NYU community. I've known Eric since high school. He was in the high school program at NYU in the photography department. He transformed us, taught us a lot, and challenged us a lot, and I'm really proud to see this work in a book form. Eric Hart Jr. is a Georgia native and NYU Tisch graduate. Today he'll be discussing his first monograph, When I Think About Power, published by Damiani. As a photographer, Hart's stylized portraiture is an exploration of Blackness and queerness. His visual language is heavily influenced by the notion of rejecting control. Through themes of power, freedom, and historical representation, Hart tries to foster consciousness for audiences as he displays people like himself and all of their power and beauty. Emil, he is just a wonderful person. I've followed his work for years, and he is the associate professor associate professor of journalism at FIT, and is a multimedia maverick who contributes to the New York Times, The Cut, Vogue, Architectural Digest, and many more. He's also the founder of Native Son, a platform created to inspire and empower Black, gay, and queer men. We are excited to host this conversation between two artists that I respect and Joan Morgan. We feel the same in terms of creating ways to talk about new concerns, new questions, and we all hope that you will all walk away with 1 or 2 copies of the book. Thank you, Eric Hart and Emil.
Hello, thank y'all for being here. And thank y'all for that introduction.
Okay, yes. Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Deb Willis and Joan Morgan, for having us. It's a really wonderful way to spend Black History Month, and particularly Deb mentioned Native Son, and one thing about Native Son that's super important for me is that it is an intergenerational community, and so it's really great when I can be in dialogue, because I'm definitely an elder now, and Eric is a youngin'. And I was telling Joan, one thing that I'm very, very, I love about you is that you're an old soul. You really are. And I'll say that because Eric shot the Pride campaign for Native Son last summer. And 2 of the shoots, I couldn't be in attendance. I'm a Virgo, like Virgo for real. But the shoots had to go on the deadlines and so forth. And what was amazing was that Eric was like, I got it. And Eric went, handled everything, and even better, turned out these amazing photographs. But what was really beautiful was that everyone called in and said, it was as if you were here. So I thank you for how you show up.
Of course, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity and for allowing me to just do my thing. I was raised in my house with my grandmother, so I feel like that's where that old soul energy comes from, because I don't know, just like I feel like I learned a lot from her and adapt in ways that an older soul has taught me to. So
I love it. Well, I'll show you to your grandmother, right?
for sure.
So Deb mentioned meeting you in high school, and I kind of want to understand your creative journey. Like, when did you, growing up, realize that visual arts, photography, spoke to you, woke something up in your soul?
I think specifically photography was when I was around 12 or 13. I grew up in the Tumblr era, and I really was drawn to like certain images that I would see on Tumblr and was trying to recreate them with my iPod. I always knew that I enjoyed art in like the art space, always. Like even when I was a kid, like 7, 8, I would be ripping out magazine images and putting them on my walls and like writing stories all the time. But I think around 12 or 13 is when I really was like, I want to do something with photographs. Like I was constantly trying to recreate images and I could just see something there. So I kind of got bit by the bug of photography.
And then when did you get your first camera? When did you start capturing images?
So I got my first camera. I started taking images, like I said, 13 iPod, but I got my first camera when I was like 15 for Christmas. And from that point forward, it was always asking my friends in high school, like, yo, I want to go downtown. Can we shoot? Let's just try something. Let's try to recreate this. Let's reference that. Like, and it was just a constant process of that.
And what were some of the things you were referencing, the images that you were referencing?
What was I referencing? It was the most random stuff, like Tumblr stuff, like Jaden Smith edits, and like, it was so random. But the first images that I really fell in love with were Dana Scruggs magazine images, and it was like the first time I had seen like these very powerful, very like masculine men, but also they felt very soft and fragile and delicate in a way. And that was the first time I'm like, I want to do that specifically. Like, I want to continuously do that. Like, not just a one-off. Like, I like the way this makes me feel. I want my images to feel like that.
I love that. And you called in divine feminine energy into your work.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like femininity and masculinity always coexist within my work in this very, I don't know, it's almost like a battle for me. Like, it's this beautiful battle. They coexist, but I feel like it's like a battle somehow.
Say more. You can't just leave us sitting there. Talk about that, like, internally as a creative.
I mean, like, for instance, this image, right? Like, I think there's beauty there, but I think there's also pain there, and you can sense both of them. And I think that, not even contradiction, but that coexistence of both of those exists, at least when I was making this body of work, it existed for me as a person. So I think a lot of that translates within the images. I think I'm moving out of that, but I do feel like a lot of the gesturing or posing or use of things that are feminine led me to pose people in a way that's questioning or in conflict.
I mean, it's interesting. I did a meditation this morning that you just sparked something in me with Pastor Mike Walron from First Corinthian Baptist Church. And he was talking about I am the dark, I am the dawn, right? And how there is darkness and light within all of us. And so when you were talking and I'm looking at the image, I feel that, right? I feel that dichotomy of masculine and feminine, light and dark, beauty and power.
For sure. And I feel like that's what creates for a beautiful image, an interesting conversation, something to really keep you with the photograph.
So then after high school, you get your camera, you're doing shoots with your friends. And then what happens next? Like, when do you meet the great Deborah Willis?
The great Deborah Willis. Let's get into it. So I had an aunt in my life who was very there. She was the one person in my family who was like, you can do whatever you want to do. Like, put your mind to whatever. Like, she could sense in me, like, I wanted more. So she kind of nourished that spirit. And she did her research and was like, NYU has this program for high schoolers. So That was summer of my junior year, so junior going into senior. So 2017, summer of 2017, I got to come to NYU. I met the great Dr. Deborah Willis, and in that program, through those teachings, it was like, no, this is what I want to do. Like, this is, it just was like a spark, and you kind of, I feel like every creative at some point has this moment where they're like, I know I'm doing something, but I can't really put words to it. I don't have the language for it yet. I think that program gave me the language to really understand what it is that I was trying to do with photography.
And then take us on the journey. So then what happens next?
So do that program, goes amazing. I could do another year of high school. NYU was my only choice. I was like, I'm going to NYU. I'm gonna move to New York. That'll be it. And I applied. I got in, got full tuition, and came. And it was like, that was really it. Like, it really was just like I was able to learn, grow, excel, learn the language, hone in on my craft. I feel like my career really started to take off in 2019. So I got connected with Spike Lee through Dr. Deborah Willis. And that was my first real photo job. And that allowed me to actually say, hey, I've done something. So I started reaching out to publications, to different people saying, hey, like, hire me. And that turned into internships. That turned into being booked for different shoots, stuff like that, in moderation. And then 2020 happened, and we all went back home. COVID happened. So I was home. I had just got the Ivy Park drop because it had just came out when COVID hit. And I put my grandparents in that, took some photos of them, and those got traction online. So once that happened, it was like, okay, that's when emails started continuously coming in, booking, stuff like that.
And then did Ivy Park pick up the photos, or the photos went viral?
Photos went viral.
Okay.
So the second drop, she sent a box and just acknowledged the photos. And I feel like that acknowledgement really helped me as a photographer.
Right. So when I think about power, I want to dive into, what does power mean to you?
Power to me, I feel like power is almost like the intersection of knowing and action. So like for me, I've always known who I was. I've always known what I wanted. I've always known these things about myself that make me kind of other. But it wasn't until I put action behind that I felt powerful in terms of, I know who I am, so now I'm going to put the action behind that to show up in a room how I want to show up. I know what is for the greater good, even if everyone else around me is like, no, that's not it. So my actions are going to be in alignment with the greater good. Like, I feel like to me, power is when those two things coexist. But also knowing what you don't know and putting action behind that. I feel like that's also powerful. Being able to stand up and, I don't know this, I need to find someone who does. I'm not sure how to deal with this, I need to find someone to help me. I think that's also power. So yeah, when those things coexist or intersect.
Right. And then was it your grandmother? Like, who allowed you to know yourself? Because you grew up down south.
Yes, child. Yeah, that's what a lot of this work is about, like confronting the South. Who allowed me to know myself? I would say to an extent my aunt. She was the one who was very much like, you can do anything in this world. In terms of career, I feel like in terms of identity, Blackness, queerness, just more of a fragile man, that literally came from just being inspired by various people who exuded that and seeing representation of that, or the internet age. Like, I really don't take it lightly that I was in Macon, Georgia, don't really have too many neighbors, don't really get to like hang out with other kids outside of school. So I was deep on the internet. So I was able to see and know that there are people out there who are like myself. So I'm really thankful for the internet, honestly.
And then is being from where Little Richard is from have any bearing?
Well, yes. Yes. We love Little Richard. Little Richard is like, and I feel like the energy that Little Richard has, that kind of like, this is me, this is, you gotta take it, I'm gonna say what I wanna say, I'm gonna be who I wanna be. That runs through making. Like, that's making. So I feel like my little fragile self was like, okay, it's a lot of that energy, but in the wrong direction. So I feel like as I get older, I feel myself transforming and evolving into that, and knowing that it's within me, that unapologetic energy that like Little Richard has, that my grandma has, and my aunt has. Like, I that's within me too. It's just like I have to own it. But yeah, love Little Richard.
Love it. I love it. I love it. So when I think about power, talk about how did it manifest? What was the initiation in your mind? Like, I want to do this book and I want it to look and feel this way.
So it started with a poem. A lot of my photo series, most everything that is like an extended project starts with a poem. So I wrote this poem titled "When I Think About Power," and it kind of dives into like the complexities of my thoughts about power. So I know the first few lines off my head, like when I think about power, specifically man's, I think about can'ts and I think about cans. It just went into that kind of like rhyme scheme of like sun and night, or sun and moon and sun, and like just kind of like day and night, like just the goods and the bads. So I knew based off of that poem that I wanted to create some kind of work that was these things that were countering, these things that were opposite, but like in coexistence, because I feel like so much of power was that for me. I just always like black and white images. I like the textures. I really love to edit. So I really love to see an image transform once you're shooting in color, putting it in black and white, up in the contrast. I shoot with a lot of skin, so to see the textures on skin. But this was one of the first images that really had me like, okay, this can be something more. This can be an extended thing, because there are so many questions there. So I felt like when I think about power was me addressing all these questions I had. So that's kind of how it manifested for me. Yeah.
And so so talk about the process of, because I know, how did you scout models? How did you?
So it's a mix. Some of these people, Instagram, some of these people, friends, word of mouth, like that kind of thing. And I'm very much a mood boarder. Like, I love to create mood boards, reach out to models, send exactly what I'm seeing. These were high school friends. This was in my grandmother's yard. That's my dad's car. So I feel like just whatever was available to me and whoever I could get access to, I could figure out a way to, make it work. Yeah.
And so you found the models, but I mean, it's just so beautiful the way it's like lingerie and nails and how you show the black body, right? I think that's the conversation we're having now, right? It's like, it's really important, like how the black body is displayed, is shown, and owning our own power within our bodies.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, I feel like it was said in the intro, but all of my work is rooted in the rejection of control. So for me, I feel like the freedom to showcase your body, the freedom to be comfortable in your skin, the freedom to just be in your most natural state, that's something that I don't feel a lot. So I like to let my work feel that. I think that's kind of what inspires this very skin-driven imagery, this very, very much just allowing black skin to be beautiful on camera. Yeah, I feel like that's definitely where that comes from.
And a lot of joy in the images as well.
Yeah, so I wanted this to feel like a process. So it's broken into quotes. So the first quote is something to the extent of, precisely at the moment when you develop a conscience, you find yourself at war with your society. And then one of the final quotes talks about just almost like the mission and purpose in life is to break down inferiority and to find the joy, find the happiness. And I want it, when I think about power, to be that journey of finding your power, expressing that joy, finding that joy, and going through all these conflicting ideas, concepts, questions in order to get to that point. So it's really like a journey and almost like somewhat of a diary journal for myself in terms of the questions I had, the things I was thinking about, religion, heritage, family, like all of that kind of unfolds within the pages.
I love that. So, I flipped open. That's why I brought my book with me. So I just happened to open to this section. So much of my life has been about self-effacement, pretense, masquerading, concealment, and indirection. And that is Marlon Briggs. Talk to me about that quote and how that manifests in the book.
Yeah, I feel like so many Black queer folks can relate to that quote and relate to this idea of hiding or being in the shadows. I think that's another kind of poetic thing that happens with Black and whites, like these deep shadows. But I feel like that's a real thing. Like I felt like at the time that I was making this, I was living in those shadows and masquerading myself and hiding myself. And my work has been a process of coming out of those shadows and allowing myself to just come to terms with all of that. So yeah, that's.
I mean, it's so interesting to me because no one mentioned this, but I will, that Eric is 24 years old. Like, let's that part. So when I say old soul, I really mean old soul. But, what I love about your generation is that you all are willing to put everything on the table. You're willing to address things, bring people into the process, and display that audaciously, like literally the ancestors' wildest dreams. So I'm really grateful that you are unearthing not just yourself, but our community, especially as Black people, as Black men, as Black queer folks in the work. What did you discover through this process about yourself?
What did I discover? I feel like, the way that these images are sequenced is kind of like my discovery almost. So I think when I think about power, it led me to all these other series of like, kind of like, I guess, cousins of when I think about power that are a little bit more camp, vibrant, out there. Like, because I feel like so much of me was like the nail image. I always go back to that because it really did something for me. But it's like, why don't you do this more? Why is this like a hidden thing? Why is there conflict there? What's wrong with it? So for me, I think when I think about power, allowed me to address my concerns and my questions of myself and then move differently. It allowed me to put the action behind the knowing. I feel like when I think about power, it gave me a lot of knowledge about my fears and really come to terms with, what are you scared of? Like, why are we doing this? So some of the other images are from a series titled Mr. Mister, but it kind of takes the same aesthetic approach. It feels the same, but it's more so thinking about performance and thinking about myself as a performer. It's based off of the Shakespearean quote, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. So I'm thinking like, if we're all performing, what is my performance? Like, how do I want to show up in the world? How do I want to act, per se? And then you get further down the line, you get to these religious images. And I'm thinking about just my highest self and my most spiritual self being this bold, colorful, wearing the nails proudly. Like, just, it's when I think about power was the foundation for a bolder self.
I love that. Where did this then lead you creatively in your work?
Honestly, it led me to like, at first, I was kind of stuck in this black and white. Like, this was a result of that. I was stuck in this kind of like way of shooting and way of creating because I was so deep into that, finishing the book. So I had to actually take a break from photography for like 2 or 3 months and just kind of turn my gears elsewhere. I did collaging a lot. I wrote a lot. So picked up those mediums. But I feel like when I think about power was an era, and I feel like I'm witnessing myself leaving that era, but I think it informs everything else that I'm doing.
Which now makes sense. So you just connected dots for me, because when I commissioned Eric and Kyle to tell the story, I was thinking who could shoot our Pride campaign, and it was really an opportunity to bring in young new voices and perspectives. And I kind of thought I was going to get this, I wasn't mad at what I got, but I was very clear. And it was funny because Kyle was like, I don't know who's Eric Hart, and I was like, no, he's the truth. And what was very interesting is that the pictures that you did are like fashion advertising, like an ad campaign, and it's vibrant and it's commercial in a good way. And commercial in a good way because we as Black, gay, and queer men don't see ourselves depicted in that way at all. And so these really lush, vibrant, joyful photos. And I thought I was gonna get dark and moody.
Yeah. But yeah, we're moving past dark and moody. Like, I just feel like now it's like, I love when I think about power and I'm so proud of it, but it's difficult to talk about it and dive back into it because it is so dark and I don't want to be in that place anymore. So it is like, yeah, I want to create work that is bold, that is colorful, that not even necessarily colorful. I'm still keeping skin tones dark and stuff like that, but that just has a level of freedom to it. And I feel like this work is asking for freedom. I feel like the work I'm creating now is like claiming it, owning it, you know?
So then I want to reference the color photos that are shown here. So those are recent, right, this year?
Yeah, that was like 2-3 weeks ago.
So I saw you building sets and grass and trees and all the things and all the amazing nails and beautiful models. What were you thinking and what did you want to create, particularly in a brand new year?
I wanted to address, and I'm still working through this creatively, but I want to address religion and play and the coexistence of that. So for me, grew up very religious once again, Macon, Georgia, Bible Belt. And I was always taught, like, you don't play with God, you gotta be a God-fearing man. I think a lot about what that term and language means. Why would I fear God? And also just myself getting closer and deeper into religion. So I wanted to, for lack of a better term, like take the piss out of religion. Like I really wanted to be in a place where I'm like, yeah, I'm a queer Christian man who has a great relationship with God, and the God that I serve has a sense of humor. This man turned somebody to a pillar of salt. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like it's just like I don't want it to be this taboo thing of like my existence not being able to have conversation with religion. So yeah, and I'm still working through that. I'm still figuring it out, but I'm enjoying being in a place of play, being in a place of the theatrics, the camp, the boldness, and being all of what I want to be. Like, so at first it was the nails. Now, if you go back to the other slide, it's like the bust downs. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it keeps growing. So I feel like it's a natural evolution from this work, and you can see the threads from that, but it's different. And I really enjoy being in that place.
I love that. In between those projects, you also did a very stunning World AIDS Day shoot for Native Son. And yeah. So as we were putting the shoot together, the conversation came up with to shoot Black, gay, and queer, and non-binary folks, men living or non-binary, folks living with HIV. And the question kept coming up. I was asking the talent, but are you going to participate in the shoot? And I was like, yeah, no, was the first thought. But then what was great was you literally turned the tables on me and started asking me all these questions. Like, well, do you feel comfortable in your body? Like, why don't you feel, or what do you feel? And we had this really amazing conversation, which led to another conversation with Kyle, which led to with all the talent asking them to do it. And they were like, well, are you gonna do it? And I was like, yeah, I don't think so. And then I thought about it and I thought, well, if I'm gonna do a nude shoot with anybody, I'm gonna do it with Eric because I trust you, but also because you had done the shoot where you were in a harness and a jockstrap. And for the Human Rights Campaign, was so impressed and inspired because there was a freedom, a power, and a joy in you in those photos that I didn't know how to access.
But you did.
But I did
Yeah.
through a process.
Yeah.
Very, in my head process. But so can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with models, talent, however you, the community, when you're photographing them? Because there's something very beautiful about that.
I mean, of course, I feel like comfort is the first step in the entire process. Like, I feel like I'm because a lot of these images and the images you're seeing are personal shoots. So I'm reaching out to models and saying, this is what I'm envisioning. What do you think about this? What is your comfort level with that? Do we need to alter anything? If this is not it, that's fine. But I also am not, if you've ever been in a shoot with me, I'm not the person that's like, do this, do this, do this, do this. Like, I really allow the models to be themselves and do what they naturally would do. And I feel like that also allows for a level of comfort. So yeah, specifically with that shoot, I feel like it's about allowing people to be themselves and allowing people to just sit within their own beauty and power. And it naturally comes out of everyone eventually. You have to get over the hump of, we're doing a photo shoot. But once you are in a shoot, you have to sell it. You have to feel yourself. And I love witnessing that from a model. I feel like the first few shots in any shoot I do aren't it. But once you get to that middle ground, it's always a moment in which there's a comfort. So yeah.
It's a funny story in the middle of, so we do the shoot. I've worked up my confidence. I'm like, I'm gonna do it. It's a clothes set. And so Eric's like, well, I think I got it, but it's like, okay. He's like, but can we try some other things? I was like, well, we here now. Like, we're not gonna turn back. And it was, and I have to say, all the trepidation, all the things, it was one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had. And I kept thinking, like, this is just amazing because you made me feel safe in that space. And so I would love for you to talk about what it means to create safe spaces for Black queer folks.
I feel like it's difficult to talk about it because it's innate. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things that's like, why would you want someone to be uncomfortable? Or why would you not allow for someone to be themselves or be in front of your lens without judgment? So, I don't know. I feel like it's very easy to have empathy when you can understand it from the other side, from the model's perspective. Like, I've been there, you know what I mean? So it's easy to create a space in which this is safe, this is cool, what do you want to do? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like, yeah, it's really innate. It's really, like, I don't think too much of it. It's like, yeah.
It's who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things I've been thinking about when I look at your work, who are the creatives, the photographers, the painters, the performers, who are the people whose work visually inspired you?
There's so many. I'm such a fan of photography. Forrest Gordon Parks. I love Zanelli Mahole. I love Kerry James Marshall. Tyler Mitchell, Dana Scruggs. Dana Scruggs heavily. Like, Dana Scruggs was the first person, like I said, who made me want to really do photography. Roy De Carava. So many. But I'm also inspired by sounds heavily, drag queens, film, theater. I love theater. Like, I love theater so much. So I'm just a fan of art. And I feel like I'm a fan of feelings. I like the way certain songs make me feel. And I'm like, how can I get that feeling within a photograph? And that mimics itself in a number of ways when I'm watching a stage play or when I'm watching a music video or something. So, yeah.
A lot of great people. what's next? What do you want to do visually? And then I know you're practicing other art forms. Tell us a little about like where your head is and where you're looking towards from a visual art perspective, and then from other forms of art.
So I definitely want to continue in this kind of colored route, the meshing of black and whites with color and like almost photographic collage in a way. And just exploring play, exploring the theme of camp, exploring things that are exaggerated, fun, playful, but also building a language with my photography. I'm learning that I really enjoy creatives who you look at their work and you're like, that's their work because of X, Y, and Z. And I think the nails is one of those things for me. I think the black and whites is one of those things for me. So no matter where I go, threading my work and creating a whole language universe of this is Eric Hart Jr.'s vision. And I don't know what realms that will take, but right now it's religion and play and those two things. But I'm also wanting to expand into other areas, so I'm definitely wanting to write way more. Like I said, I love theater. Wanting to like get into that space somehow. I did my first poetry reading like 2 or 3 weeks ago. That was a great experience. So just I always had this idea of myself like I'll be a really successful photographer, and then once I hit a certain point, I'll start to expand and like do all these other things that I want to do. And then I was like, you don't know when that point is coming, so why are you waiting? So yeah, I feel like right now in this year, my biggest goal is to expand and do as much as I want to do. I really look up to like the Oprah Winfreys and the Tyler Perrys and those people who are media moguls and who do whatever they want to do. Like that's really my goal with my artistic practice, is to reach that point where whatever I want to do creatively, I know there's funding for it, I know there's backing for it, I know there's an audience for it, because I've proven that this world is valid.
I love that. I've proven that this world is valid. I love that. So you mentioned the Oprah Winfrey. And so it was amazing to go on Instagram and see you with Mother O, Queen O, and your book. Tell us about that moment.
It was all of like 2-3 minutes, but it was like the best 2 or 3 minutes ever. Yeah, she looked through the book. She was like, it's beautiful. There were certain images like, you can make money off of that. I'm like, Oprah, that's the goal. Like, but yeah, it was a really, really great experience. And it was also one of those experiences that keep you going. Because I feel like at that moment, and specifically at that moment, I was like, what am I doing for real? Like, that was the first time I experienced like a funk within my creativity. Like where I was just like, I don't really want to shoot. I don't really know what's happening and things feel slower, because I can recognize that. I don't want to say I had it easy, but I had a lot of opportunities while I was still in college. And that allowed me to have opportunities when I first got out of college. And this was the first time I'm like, my opportunities are not coming in like they used to. But meeting Oprah was like, you're gonna be all right. Because it's like, that was like a goal. That's like a thing in life. Like, me and my grandma would watch Oprah after school every day. And to see her and like be in that space, I was like, you're gonna be fine. You got it. It's fine.
Just keep going.
Right. Just keep going, literally.
Can we open it up? Yeah, I would love to take questions from the audience.
Part of the reason Emil and Eric that I wanted you paired together is what in academia we call the longue durée, right? Because at the end of the 90s, you were literally Eric's age, right? That's your when and where you enter. And in so many ways, I'm looking at you talk to him, and I see the culmination of so much possibility, of things that we dreamed of as creatives from that time, of things that could possibly happen. So, Emil, I'm wondering if you could just take a few minutes to speak to us about Eric through the lens of your 20-something-year-old self and what you hope for in the lens of possibility. And then Eric, at some point, believe it or not, you're gonna sit in that chair. And I want to know what you hope your legacy is to the next Eric. Emil, you first.
Okay. So funny because someone said, have I written, my therapist said, have you written a note, a letter to your younger self? And I have not, and it's something I actually intend on doing. I would say, and I kind of said this earlier, but there's a light in Eric that, and it's the audacity, right? I think about when you're Black, when you're queer, in this world, we're bigger boys, we not sample size. You have to move a certain way, and you have to protect your magic, and you do that. And you do that with so much grace, but ultimately you do that through your creativity, and your creativity is undeniable. No one can ever challenge that, take that away from you. And I think that's what I see in Eric, that I literally jokingly say, I feel like Eric is my child because there's just so much brilliance at a young age, but it's the confidence, it's the power, right? To say, I'm gonna do this book, I'm gonna be a Google Fellow, I'm gonna be on Forbes 30 under 30. And you're not saying that, you're just doing that. But I think that's, for me, what also resonates with an age of hip hop, right? Of like, we're going to claim our own space, we're going to narrate our own stories and journeys and create our own images. And so that's what I see, which I hope that's.
Thank you.
I would say that similar to Emil and what Emil does for Black queer individuals, holding space, holding time, holding, like, I know that if I'm ever questioning anything, if I ever need someone to talk to, I can always call Emil. And it means so much more knowing that you get it and knowing that you've done the things you want to do in life and that you're still doing the things you want to do in life. And you're like a testimony that it can be done. And I feel like for me, I hope to do that for the next Eric, the young Black queer individuals, but not even just young Black queer individuals, anyone who can resonate with the story of feeling like an outsider, feeling like, you know, your family can't make it happen for you, so how do you do it? Working hard and not seeing the results you want all the time. Like, anyone who resonates with those elements that make me, I want to inspire, because I know how much it felt for me to have an Oprah, for me to have a RuPaul, for me to have an Emil. Like, I really hope to go to the moon, to the stars, be as big as I can be in order to have anyone looking at me say, I can do that too. But not only that, but also being someone who does give back and gives back in a way that is intimate, in a way that doesn't feel like, just look at me. It's more so, I'm here for you. I feel that from Emil. I feel that from Dr. Willis. I feel that from a lot of different people within my network, and I definitely want it to be that for another younger person.
Thank you, John.
I also wanted to just tell you guys that Kalila here curated the Eric Hart and Emil Wilbekin playlist on Spotify. There's a QR code right on the books table, so scan and help yourselves do it.
I wanted to ask, what is the most challenging part of your creative process, whether it's technical or conceptual, and does it change depending on the subject matter of the series that you're shooting?
The most difficult part of what I do is finances. Like, literally having the money, because it's like, once you create at a certain level, even if people around you aren't holding you to that, it's like, I can't not create beyond this at that point. Like, it's like, if it would be regression. But this costs money. Hobby Lobby had 40% off, so I got the grants. But literally, like, it's like, you have to continue at this level. And I'm like someone who is very much like, I want to do it. I want to do it big. I want to go there. But it's like, sometimes you do it and you don't see the payoff until later on. Like, I took that the nail image that I kept talking about. Took that in like 2019, I think. I didn't see money directly off of that image until last year. Someone acquired the actual image. But it's like that, you have to know in your art that it will come back to you somehow. And I think that's the most difficult thing, to keep reminding yourself that you're doing this for a purpose and that it will pay off. And also not being so hard on yourself when you have seen wins. Because I feel like I'm very much like, once I hit a peak, for some reason, if I'm not hitting that same peak, I'm like, well, it's not good enough. You got to keep going. So I'm really, the older I get, the more I'm like, you got to remember what you've done and who you are and what you're capable of. Like, relax. It'll come. So yeah, that's like the two things for sure. Right.
Hi, thank you for a wonderful conversation. I'm curious also about your creative process, but more so how you develop your concepts and ideas. Is it like through downloads? Are you into like meditation? Like, what is it that takes you from, okay, this is like an image and now I'm actually gonna like create something like what we're seeing right now?
So my process is rooted in music playlists. Like, I really love to listen to certain songs, and like, once I catch a vibe with a song, sometimes I'll download the instrumental and then just kind of like walk and listen to it, or just get lost in the music, because somehow that always breeds some type of thought, some type of process of creation. But I'm also, once again, I'm trying to call myself a writer more to get comfortable with it, but I'm also a writer, so I love to just space out and write. And like, sometimes in journaling, sometimes in trying to write a poem, just even reading a lot of the times will allow ideas to pop up. So I think those are the two biggest: music and writing.
Hi, my name is Kiana. I'm from Seattle. First time in New York. But I'm actually curious to know, because it sounds like you are a creative entrepreneur. And so I'm curious to know, I have multiple questions for this. So what does your team and process look like now that is different than last year? And what are you doing now to scale your business?
What does my team and process look like now? I'll start with that one. The team is not that different. I don't have big sets. I typically don't have a lot of people on set. Typically it's like a friend assisting, or if it's a commercial job, it's different. But if I'm shooting personal work, I don't like to have a busy set. I feel like it distracts, and you don't ever really need that many people. There was two parts of that question. Say the question again. Sorry.
Yes. So what does your team and process look like
Team and
now?
process.
That's different than last year.
Process. The process is different because I'm a lot more intentional than the more and more I create, the more intentional I get. So I hold on to images a lot longer. I think through concepts a lot longer than I typically would. Like, when I first was doing like editorial gigs and a lot of these shoots, or like when I think about power shoots, I would shoot like that morning, edit that evening, and then just like, I've literally sent off editorial shoots like the next day or that night. And it's like, why are you going so fast? Because I was just so excited to have the opportunity, or so excited to see the work be what I wanted it to be. But now it's like, work changes over time drastically. And I feel like that's something I learned with this book. So I sit with my work a lot longer. There are certain images that I'm like, it's it. I already know, like the Garden of Eden one. And that's why I put it out a lot quicker. But I have a lot of images that I'm just kind of sitting on and like thinking through. That's the biggest shift in process. You said, how am I scaling my business? I feel like being more intentional with who I'm willing to work with and what I'm going to accept as a businessman. Because I feel like last year, while I was in college, like prior to this year, I was very much, if it comes to me, I'm going to do it. If it comes to me, I'm going to do it. If I get the opportunity, I'm going to do it. But now it's kind of like, if it isn't growth, or if it isn't elevation, then I'm not taking it. because I don't want to just shoot to shoot. I don't want to just shoot because it's an opportunity. I want to shoot with intention and shoot things that mean something to me. Because a lot of the times you'll do things that you may not see a lot of money from, or you might not see like a growth in any way. So it's like, if I'm not even getting anything out of it, what am I doing this for? And also just being way more particular about the money that's coming in, saving for taxes, all that. Like, cause last year was my first year like out of college, and I didn't know nothing about none of that. So I got hit in the head, and I was like, ooh, like, yeah, let me start saving this money better. Let me start putting certain things on certain accounts and this, like the whole business thing. I feel like people need to talk about that way more. Yeah.
And
So, yeah.
that leads into my next question. What do you think is missing in your business in order to scale?
What is missing in my business? I really would like representation, because I feel like I'll get so consumed with the personal and with what I want to do that I lack in reaching out and saying, hey, my name is Eric Hart Jr., I'm a photographer, hire me. Bidding, all of that, the business of that, I'm not great at. So of course I can tap on people who are better than me, but I do feel like photo representation would keep the commercial ball rolling. What else is missing? It's really that, like, I feel like a team that would actually do that. But I feel like I'm very hesitant because I'm like, you taking 20% of my money? Like, how do I know that you're doing what you're saying you're doing? Which is like a thing I've come into with a lot of different agencies, so.
Eric, you should follow up with the question about your residency, the difference from last year to this year.
For sure, that has been a big help as well. So I am currently at Next Haven, which is a residency in New Haven, Connecticut. And that has allowed me to create freely. This is my first time actually having a studio. So I'm actually allowed to do bigger and broader work, because a lot of these were shot either at NYU studios or in my apartment. So like the work is just naturally smaller. And you get a stipend for being a fellow, so that also helps in terms of what you're able to do creatively. But yeah, residencies, fellowships, definitely helpful for a creative, for sure.
I asked this question just because, I think at the end of the day, it's a business as well. And so I'm always curious to know how everyone runs their business. So thank you for sharing.
Of course.
How you doing? My name is Malik. How you doing? Nice to meet you. I'm very, very inspired just being in this space. Eric, we actually spoke on Instagram and he told me to come here, and I got so much excitement. I'm gonna try to hold it. But all right, 2 questions. How does New York inspire your work? How does New York inspire your work coming from the South? And the second question, did you choose the quotes for the book prior, or did they find you and you put it in?
Those are good questions. How does New York inspire my work? Well, I'm not in New York right now, so I don't think it's doing it as much, but I feel like the energy within New York and seeing people who don't care what you think of them, seeing people just be themselves, seeing people who just live life. Like, New York is a place where people get to just live life. And it's really like, you see the difference in the South and in New York specifically. Like, if I'm going home and I've recently, like when I went home for Christmas, I had a moment to myself, like, why y'all holding their business? Like, because in New York, stuff happens on the street, you just keep moving. Or, it's just that kind of energy. Like, we're all piled on top of each other. Like, it's just like you kind of get used to people just being people. Whereas in the South, there's a lot more judgment. At least where I come from, spaces I've grown up in. There's a lot more judgment. It's a lot more critical of people just being. And I feel like New York has allowed me to allow for that freedom to be in my work. The second question was?
Absolutely. I wanted to add in, I lived in the South for 6 years and I felt exactly what you just said. Very, very judgmental, it has to be this way. I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, so it was so hard for me to adapt to that world that I felt like I had to ask that. And the second question, sorry, was did you select the quotes prior for the book, or did they find you?
So, the quotes came somewhere in the middle of the process. I specifically sought them out. It wasn't kind of like I was reading and found them. I specifically sought them out, but they definitely inform. Like, I felt like after reading certain quotes, it's like, this is exactly what this image is giving me and what I'm trying to tackle. But after finding the quotes, they definitely influence what I shot afterwards. So I can sense like a difference in approach to certain images because I had them. I had this wall in my apartment with all the images and the quotes. And like once I could see them all together, I'm like, what's missing here? And the quote kind of drove that conversation of what's needed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course, thank you.
Very impressive and great questions. The thing that resonated with me was when you said, one of the things that resonated with me was when you said about being fragile. I wasn't sure because the way you present or the work that you do is definitely not. And then the word power, so I was just curious if you could speak to that. And then the other thing that I was thinking about as you talk is in regards to what do you do outside of your creativity? Because you were talking about getting paid obviously for it. And I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I'm just curious, do you have passions outside of the art?
I'll start with the second one. No. And I need to. I really do. Like the older I'm getting and the deeper I get into my craft, I'm like, this was once my escape and now it's no longer that. So like, it's like now I don't have an escape. So it's like, yeah, I definitely got to get hobbies. I don't know. And once again, I do resonate with the old soul thing. I like to stay in the house. I don't like to just be outside too much. So yeah. The first question.
You said fractured, or
Fragile.
Fragile, yeah.
I feel like my spirit is fragile. Like I feel like I may present myself and that's once again the South. You're tall. This is how you enter a room. This is how you shake a man's hand. This is how your voice sounds when you speak. This is how you stand. Like literally verbatim. Like this is how you present yourself. This is your performance. And I think I'm a great performer. However, I know that my spirit and my energy is, and my friends know and the people who are closest to me know, like Eric, it's a big teddy bear. I feel like my spirit and my energy are very much softer. I don't like conflict. I don't like discomfort, and I don't ever want to make someone feel discomfort. I feel like we can all be people who are just, better to each other. So I feel like that's part of that fragile that I mean. And I'm also very sensitive. I hide it. I keep it in the shadows. Maybe it's Sagittarius energy, but I'm also very, very sensitive. So I think there's a lot of fragility, but I do thank my grandma and my dad and everyone for allowing me to be a good performer in that way because it keeps me going. Because if I allowed that fragility to drive me, then it would be like, I would just be broken.
Okay, sidebar related to the first question or the first answer. Eric is hilarious on Instagram and will post pictures and stories and videos in drag, with nails, with balloons for breasts and all the things, showing out and being hilarious and ratchet.
It's true. It's true. It's on the close friends though. Performance.
So there is joy and other things happening. That's part of his personality. I think that's when I was like, oh, we definitely gonna be friends. I love it. Any other question?
So the first time I ever used the word queer in a sentence, I was here in Harlem, and after we were at a place called Bar Wine with a few friends, and a man looked over at our group and just said, "Isn't it fabulous to be Black, queer in Harlem?" And it was the first time in my life that I looked around that room, I was like, absolutely. After that night, I got to meet Emil. And we'd been friends on Instagram for a few years, but I met him at a birthday party. And every time I come to New York, I get inspired. And young man, I see myself in you. I see myself in Emil. You tell a beautiful story that so many brothers can't tell. And for you guys sitting up there, being in your truth, it is beautiful. And I learn something every day about myself. And you said triggering words. I sat here, I kind of wanted to cry. I wanted to stand up and scream and say yes. I want to say, do I need to get my nails done? You know, I mean, there's so many things. There's anger, but brother, you're doing it and I see it. And Emil, you make me love myself on your Instagram and love being me. And to see anybody you're connected with, I feel it. You can tell you're nice. You can tell you're kind. And you have a great story. Keep telling it because it's really impactful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Abdul Qadir, wondering, as you're commuting up and down from New Haven to New York, what are you also taking in? What sceneries might we enjoy through your eyes and from your words at this moment? That might inspire us to also think about the outside landscapes, the city.
Landscapes. Once again, I feel like I get inspired by the books, the music. So I feel like a lot of the things that inspire me are within doors. And I feel that's partially why I shoot in the studio. I don't really find myself looking at landscapes or scenery or I don't know why that is, but I feel like my imagination is the inspiration. I like to go into myself. I like to go into words. I like to go into these things that people have created because I feel like that's, I don't know, the imagination and the far beyond is just really intriguing to me. So yeah, I find myself spacing out a lot. It's actually getting bad. Like I gotta stop disassociating. Like I really have to, seriously, like I'm so serious. So yeah, I maybe that's a challenge to be more present and to absorb more of what's around me within this world. But I feel like there's so many worlds within art. So I feel like I like to get lost in those.
Thank you all so much. Eric, I have a final question for you. And that question is, how do people who are fans of your work and fans of you continue to invest in you and in your work?
A number of ways. I feel like getting the book, purchasing the book, sharing work. I have witnessed firsthand the power of social media, and people knock it, but my career really took off based off of the strength of social media. If you see a photographer's work and you like it, share it, comment, send it to people. Like that really does matter. And it sucks that it matters, but it does. But also like showing up like y'all did tonight. Like I'm really thankful for everyone in this room for being here. I know this room is not packed, but y'all's presence is so loud and so here, and I feel y'all. Like y'all really support, and I thank y'all for that. So keep showing up for any creative you really enjoy, and yeah, y'all are doing it.
Let's have a round of applause.